All right. You ready, Greg? Let's get started.
Ready?
All
Yeah.
right. On behalf of the Nashville Sports Council, I'd like to welcome you to a conversation with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, and we're so glad to have everybody here. This is going to be just really special, I think really interesting for all of you to be able to see what he has to say, what he has to share about one of the most pivotal years in a lot of people's lives. I'm Laura Rutledge. I work at ESPN. As you can see, we get like a big ESPN right behind me here, and also the SEC Network, which is incredibly important to me. And I'm very fortunate to host SEC Nation in the fall for college football and for SEC football. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm hosting NFL Live, which is the studio that I'm in right now. And fair warning, I haven't asked to be in this studio at this time today. So if I get kicked out of the studio, you will all watch it happen live right here, and we can laugh about it together. So I went to Florida, so I am an SEC girl, and I love the SEC as well as all of college sports. Before we begin, let's get a little background on the Nashville Sports Council. And the Nashville Sports Council is a membership-based organization dedicated to attracting and hosting sporting events in the greater Nashville area in an effort to positively impact the local economy. So if you're not a member and you're interested in being one, you can head to the website listed on your screen. The slide will appear in just moments, just to give you a little bit more information there. And make sure you check them out, because what they're doing is really great, a variety of different initiatives, but either way, attracting a lot of great things to the local economy there in Nashville. Here we go. For more information, yeah, I see it there. Okay, let me make my screen bigger here. There we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, the future is bright. Okay, so as you can see, National Sports Council, check them out, join. It's a great organization to be a part of. Without further ado, let's introduce Greg Sankey as he's walking to grab something. There we go. He's coming back. He became the 8th commissioner.
I was grabbing this.
Oh, I love it. More hoops in Music City. Let's go. That's a good shirt. I need to get one of those. Maybe I can work something out. Okay, so Greg Sankey became the 8th commissioner of the Southeastern Conference on June 1st, 2015, has successfully introduced change and advancement for the conference throughout his time as commissioner. He first joined the SEC staff in 2002 as Associate Commissioner for Governance, Enforcement, and Compliance, later added supervision of the league's championship staff to his responsibilities. He was elevated to Executive Associate Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer for the league office in 2012. And before moving to the SEC, Commissioner Sankey served as Commissioner of the Southland Conference for nearly 7 years. So he's done a lot. We're so glad to have you, Commissioner Sankey, and excited to get going here. Let's begin with just an easy one, right? The past year amid a pandemic has been crazy. And it was around this time, we were just talking before we got started, about 51 weeks ago to the day, that you're in Nashville. You're right at the start of the SEC men's basketball tournament, and everything kind of stopped. So I'll just start with, what was all of that like for you now that you reflect on it almost a year later?
We go to next Monday, the 8th. That was like the last normal day. We were in Greenville, South Carolina, presented the trophy to South Carolina, the women's basketball team, on our tournament championship. They were the #1 ranked team in the country. And then, Monday things started to change on that week. Traveled to Nashville Tuesday, and then Wednesday it really started to change. And by 10:30 on Thursday morning, which was March 12th of 2020, we had said we're going to stop. What's funny, there's probably somebody in the audience today who was at the dinner we had on Tuesday of last year. So that would have been March 10th, where the Ivy League had said they're not playing a tournament. And I stood up and said, we're playing a tournament and we're playing with fans, because we still had all of that indication. In fact, people forget we played games with fans on Wednesday night, the 11th. But obviously the world changed, particularly when Rudy Gobert tested positive with the Utah Jazz and the NBA shut down. But we had Dr. Fauci testifying before Congress. The World Health Organization on the 11th declared a pandemic officially. And, we ended up going home without presenting a trophy, without shooting off the confetti, and without dealing with what was normal, which was a lot of intense basketball in Bridgestone Arena.
I mean, it's just remarkable and also difficult to even process everything that's happened since. And when you go back to those moments and the pivotal decision making that was happening, what were some of those meetings like? Because I realize it was happening very real time. You mentioned sort of the timeline nationally, but for you guys and for your group, how did those meetings go as you're trying to decide what under the sun to do?
You could start at any point. Sean Henry and I have had a laugh. We had a conversation about whether we should allow people to wear masks at the tournament. And it seemed so quaint, right? That,
Yeah.
wow, there was just these questions about mask wearing. That was like on Tuesday. And then Wednesday morning, we started with what's a regular meeting of our athletics directors, 9 a.m. And we had prepared a series of press releases, everything from we're playing as scheduled, everybody's in, to a potential shutdown, and had been just thinking about how to adapt. That Wednesday morning, we provided our athletics directors with a press release that basically said, if you're uncomfortable attending and you have a ticket, just tell us and we'll give you your money back. It was like the voluntary social distancing approach. And our athletics directors talked about it for about 15, 30, 20, 30 minutes and decided, let's not put that out right now. And again, you accelerate through the day. We were supposed to talk about plans for the next football season, had a new football officiating coordinator, name, image, and likeness issues. We had a government relations firm that was going to visit with us that day. And when Dr. Fauci started testifying, everybody was looking at their phone and not paying attention to me. And he was in front of a congressional committee of some sort. The World Health Organization pandemic declaration hits. That wasn't really a tipping point. It was another piece of information. And we had campuses that had altered, including Vanderbilt, obviously in Nashville in Florida, had altered the return to classes after their spring break, said we won't go back to in-person classes. And that was starting to develop on that Wednesday across other campuses. So through the day Wednesday, we were talking really internally. We took a break, came back. I had word the NCAA Board of Governors was meeting, didn't know what was on the agenda other than an update on health information. And probably about 2:30, we gathered again. By 3:30 or so, had made the decision that starting Thursday, we'd have no fans. And I was of the opinion that just closing the doors Wednesday evening was actually not a wise decision because everyone was going to be there. They'd be in confined spaces, probably on Broadway. We were better off having the full arena open. We had about 8,000 people. And then we had to go through official decision making on Wednesday. Presidents voted. I ended up, in fact, I've watched my interview with Dari on set in Bridgestone Arena, just explaining ourselves. I watched a March 12th interview with Carl Ravitch when we had shut down. And I've actually gone back and have watched kind of a self-scouting activity. Our coaches talk about scouting. So evaluating how I communicated in real time as this was a situation that developed. And understand this, Laura and everyone, there's not like a pandemic playbook. So my undergraduate degree, my graduate degree, I never took the course that said, when you have a global pandemic, here's the 10 steps to success. So we were, building the bridge as we crossed the river and writing the instruction manual as we did so.
It makes it truly even that much more remarkable to know that no one had any sort of roadmap for any of this. And yet throughout all this, the SEC has been praised for developing an organized plan that kept multiple sports going safely. What do you attribute that to?
Our campus leadership. I was in Fayetteville, Arkansas all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They had 18 different events. We had our indoor track and field championships. Last week, I was in Athens, Georgia for women's swimming and diving. And what's happened on our campuses with our student athletes. So this hasn't been us just telling our student athletes. They walked through this experience with us. They helped us make decisions. And in fact, we had a 90-minute video chat with our doctors and our football leadership council that ended up in the Washington Post back in June, where, you're tense about how is this going to be portrayed. And after about 15 minutes of attention, I said, you know what, we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. We're communicating, we're educating, we're answering questions where we have answers, and where we don't have answers, we're being honest and saying we don't know, but we'll get back to it. And For me, I go to a weekend. I spent the entire second weekend in July on individual phone calls with all of our presidents and chancellors, just asking how they saw the rest of the summer leading into the return to classes, to on-campus learning, to residential learning on our campuses. What did they think about decision-making around football? I had created a timeline of the decisions that needed to be made that was enormously helpful. But if you go back to that day, that series of days, March 11th, 12th, and Friday the 13th, or Friday, we said, everyone on our campuses stop weightlifting, stop conditioning, stop spring practice and football. It was pretty dramatic. And the lead up to return to activity, again, watching what I was saying and when we just didn't know, it's been interesting now to experience what we had to do. We kind of knew what had to be done to return to play with testing and oversight and understanding how you kept people healthy. And that's the work that we had to do, and keeping our campuses connected to it is what's provided the basis for our success or our achievement so far.
Yeah, and through all of that, I mean, you couldn't have predicted some of the twists and turns by any stretch of the imagination. So I can't even imagine how all that has been managed. But let's get to the 2021 SEC Men's Basketball Tournament. I got to give a quick shout out to this event because this has always been just one of my favorite events to watch, one of my favorite events to cover. In fact, the last one that I covered, I was pregnant and nobody knew. And I did not feel very well, to be totally honest. And yet I still enjoyed myself because it's such a wonderful event, and the city of Nashville makes it that. Obviously, this year is going to be different. And when you think about that, I think there's probably still a level of relief that we're seeing the schools and these great student athletes be able to compete. But yet, when you look at how it's all coming together, what are your thoughts about having this 2021 men's SEC basketball tournament this year?
Well, it's good to be back. There's a level of discomfort that's been in me since mid-September when we had Mississippi State played women's soccer at Auburn. That was our first contest after we stopped in March. And with COVID testing, contact tracing, the disruption that can occur that is really outside of our control. There's always that kind of gnawing in the stomach. Yet to be back, to have the opportunity to play a tournament is really rewarding. And I think it's rewarding for us because of all the work we've done. I think it's rewarding for our teams because it again becomes the achievement of a season. I will ask this, just because Reese's mom has range, as you talked about, like working through football and pregnancy and basketball. So she's become iconic for her football picks between helmets. Do we have basketball picking plans, or has she got to work into that?
We might need to work on that. Yeah, I think that what we could do, and we actually talked about this a little bit, so you're putting it back at top of mind for me. We could get some little basketballs and see, what she would do. Maybe like at least for the championship game in the tournament. You've given me a good idea. If
Yeah,
we
you're
do,
supposed to ask the questions, not me. So I broke the rules.
You turn the tables on me there. I'm gonna pitch this to Reese and her agent, who is her dad. I'm gonna pitch this to Reese and her agent later on tonight, and I'll update you. What will you miss most this year, and look forward to bringing back to normalcy when normalcy returns about this SEC men's basketball tournament?
Probably just that word, normal. Normal is, I've experienced a little bit of it from my side. So we had swimming and diving, as I mentioned, 9 days ago, then indoor track and field. We're in this cycle where everything kind of comes together. Football makes the fall busy, but right now, every one of our sports is actually competing except for football. This is the busiest time we've ever had. And in the past, you wouldn't have volleyball and soccer and cross country happening. So it's pretty remarkable. And so I have this a little bit of attachment to normal, and I think people experience that as well when they get to see our games on TV. But to go in on Tuesday, we usually have a dinner with some of our Nashville friends, our Nashville Predator friends, the Sports Council friends, just to kind of celebrate the moment. Our athletics directors are a part of that. And then you go through meetings, the games on Wednesday evening, which are this really cool start that we've created, post expansion, where we it's a general admission ticket. We have a lot of people that may be their only attachment to the games of the week because of, everybody wants a ticket to our tournament. And we've built something special in Nashville, and we're very intentional about doing so. And that's where the relationships with the relationship with the Sports Council, but with the Predators, with Sean Henry, and the work they've done is a reward to have the whole place full, to have people yelling and cheering for their team, and mad when the whistle blows in the wrong way, but ultimately celebrating together. And it's rewarding to be there, but I really long for the return to when we're not worrying about swabbing our noses and distancing and seating, and it just is a celebration like we've been accustomed to for so many years.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back as you're saying all this to standing on the court there and looking up into the stands and just seeing it packed with all the different jerseys from different schools in the SEC, and people just having so much fun and celebrating a great sport. And I long for that as well. You mentioned Nashville and the SEC, and the SEC tournament will be in Nashville until 2035, and SEC football media days will be in the Music City until 2023. What do you think makes the SEC and Nashville such a good match?
Well, you start with the city and obviously its location. In fact, I'm actually looking at a map. If you remember, we had a kind of a documentary series, Saturdays in the South, that opened last season with a pen drawing of our region. And so I actually have one of those products, this pen and ink map. So you look at the map, Nashville's almost exactly in the geographic center of the league, a little bit maybe north of that center. The ability to have an event for people to pour outside, and the weather's generally good. We've had snow a time or two, but generally pretty good. And again, it goes back to this celebration. And when we thought about how do you magnify the buzz, it was actually a question our presidents asked us back in about 2010, 11. How do we create some buzz around our tournament? Nashville provided that opportunity. And as we've looked at football media days, knowing what happened with the NFL draft in downtown Nashville, how can we do a little bit more has been on my mind. And we thought about doing it this year. Can't really prepare and know that come July, we'll be back to normal. So moving to 2023 is the right decision, and appreciate Scott Ramsey and the Sports Council and the folks in the Convention Bureau there having some flexibility, because we want to make sure that what we do in Nashville is special, because Nashville is a special place, which has continued to attract our consideration of events being located in the Music City.
I can't wait for that scene, SEC football media days in 2023. That'll be a lot of fun. You think about even what it has been in the lobby of the hotel there in Hoover, and magnify that by a lot. That's going to be a blast. Let's talk about some of the college sports in the SEC that have had so much success. And we start with college football. The SEC has won 4 out of the past 6 college football playoff titles. And this year was so unprecedented and so different. What can you say about not only just the level of success that you've seen over the past few years, but also the level of success that we saw out of the SEC this year, with even though Alabama winning the title and making it to the playoff as being the SEC's representative, just the excellence leading up to that as well, with all these teams that had to play only SEC teams and had to play such rigorous schedules.
It goes back to your question about how we made decisions and how, my answer about staying connected as a league. When we pivoted to a new kickoff date, that being having been September 26th, 3 weeks after what we were scheduled to compete, just so people understand, our thinking was, what do we have to do to give ourselves the best chance of playing a meaningful season? Our student athletes asked us, am I going to have a meaningful season? And that became a really important part of the consideration. And as we looked at, playing 12 games starting on Labor Day weekend, bringing all of our students back to campus in this environment, there was so much uncertainty that moving to September 26th put us at least 3 weeks beyond all of our campus open dates. And we knew with like Memorial Day and July 4th, there'd been this uptick in cases. So if that happened, we could let the uptick happen, and hopefully things would level out. Gave a little bit more time for our teams to prepare, because we'd had so much disruption in the spring, in the summer, and then we could control our schedule. So it's really important to remember when we started September 26th, all 14 of our teams played that first week, the second week, and the third week. We had 7 games each of those first 3 weeks. I don't think there's another league that's accomplished that at the professional or the collegiate level. And again, that's the testament to the dedication of our student athletes and our coaches and just preparing and sticking to protocols. But then, COVID happens, and we had Florida and Vanderbilt who had to stop for a period of time. We started reshuffling. So your question about success is really based on the answer is based on what happened every day and every week. I had to make phone calls, and it's a local interest. The week Tennessee and Vanderbilt were going to play on a Saturday, I called on Monday afternoon the athletics director at Arkansas, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee, and said, those games you thought you were playing, you're not playing. Well, that ends up being the week that Vanderbilt pivoted to play at Missouri. Sarah Fuller played in the game, is kind of an additional storyline. Those are the things. Devontae Smith winning the Heisman. Nobody thought that at the beginning of the year. Nobody saw what Sarah was going to do, but Sarah was there because we played soccer as well. It's not as if this was just football only. We played volleyball in the fall. We played golf, tennis, cross country championship, soccer. That led into that storyline, which was based on our school's willingness, our team's willingness to adapt their schedules to this environment. I actually think that may be the greatest success, is all that was done to make it possible. We played 69 of 71 games. I'm competitive enough that I'm still mad about not playing 71 of 71. But if you'd have told us in July we would do that, we'd name a conference champion in Atlanta on December 19th, I think everybody would have said, that's great. We had 8 of our 12 bowl games that we scheduled were played. Every one of our teams that had a losing record beat what was at the time a nationally ranked opponent in a bowl game. And that's in addition to the national championship success and wins in other bowl games. So really a great story that's all connected to kind of the dedication and focus that produced the outcome.
It was an exceptional SEC championship game, by the way. That was one of my favorite games to watch. And then the other thing you think about too, when you look back on Sarah Fuller's story, to your point, is the fact that she had won the championship in soccer just a week before she ends up making history. And it's just that's an interesting point, tying it all together that way. I hadn't thought of it that way. All right. What would you say stands out to you when it comes to the growth of the SEC brand?
Wow. And, it's interesting to think about that, like a year from this COVID situation starting. I think from a brand standpoint or an image standpoint, I've been told individually by people in pro sports, by politicians, of how much they admire the way we've handled ourselves through these last 12 months. And I say we, that's not about me, that's about us collectively. We had disagreements, we had debates, we had votes that were unanimous and votes that weren't so unanimous. But we pulled together, and we had a set of realities around racial inequities and social justice issues in our society that from time to time go to the back page. They were on the front page. We have ads on our games that talk about together it just means more. So we take our "it just means more" slogan and go back to a 50-year celebration of integration where we put the word together in front to honor Perry Wallace, Godfrey Dillard, Nick Northington, Greg Page, Houston Hogg, and Wilbur Hackett in their efforts to integrate football and men's basketball in this league. And we've used that to represent who we are and showed those images. I think all of those elements in our current environment are important to our brand, if you will. And then there's the success that exists. So I have those 4 national championship trophies, mini trophies, right over here on a table. That success is important. Right outside, we have a trophy cabinet we put in when I became commissioner to remind us, as we're trying to graduate every student athlete, we want to win every championship. And so we have 7 championship trophies, national championship trophies, still in our our trophy case. And as I was driving in, we have the four top ranked teams in baseball right now, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think 8 or 9 of the top 25 just from here. And I heard a baseball commentator on the radio describing us as the evil empire. And I smiled when that was described. We have 10 of the top 25 softball teams, as good as we've been in football. I was at a gymnastics meet on Friday evening. The level of gymnastics competition among young women here is phenomenal. And so the decision making, the commitment of our membership, and then the success all integrate to this presentation through our partners with ESPN, the SEC Network, that people can touch and feel in a meaningful way. That's what makes this a special conference.
Even just for gymnastics alone, the SEC Network putting on Friday Night Heights and giving these young women a platform to shine where they didn't have that previously because it wasn't really on the air is remarkable. And I think those are the things that, you're right, the brand throughout is so strong because you're talking about not just the pinnacle of football and basketball, but so many more. And that's a credit to what you guys have done. So great job. What new SEC events or initiatives are you focused on for the years ahead?
So I don't know a funny answer to that.
Yes.
It was like mid-November with our presidents and chancellors. And we had planned in March 12th last year, a long session on strategic planning. So we had an athletics directors meeting on March 11th. That's the one I discussed with the press release. And then by the end of the day, there's no fans. On March 12th, we were supposed to have this 4-hour meeting. We always conduct this meeting in Nashville with our presidents of our men's basketball tournament. It wasn't until mid-November because strategic planning became day-to-day issues. And I mean that. I mean, there are business leaders in the audience who probably are nodding that just have observed since this experience has started, every day has been its own strategic plan. And Laura, in all honesty, through the fall, I could not make it to the office, really, no matter what time I tried, without my phone ringing and blowing my day apart with a new emerging issue. And so that means that looking down the road has become a bit of a challenge. And we're also dealing in college athletics with things like state legislation around sports gambling, around student athlete economic activity associated with their use of name, image, and likeness, of will Congress become involved, of litigation issues that will be defining what college sports looks like. And in fact, there are these existential issues about how will we conduct college sports competition on a national basis that are in front of us. That is a very, very, very important set of issues, or are a very important set of issues that are part of what our strategic thinking has to include. You know, the announcement we made in early December, I think it was December 10th, that our future from a media standpoint will be tied to Disney. To ABC, to ESPN. Obviously, the SEC Network is a partnership with ESPN, pivoting away after the 23 football season with our game on CBS at 3:30 each week. We'll still have a 3:30 game, but that will go to ABC. That's an enormously important strategic decision. And we made that based, on economics, but there's a reality that the combined impact of broadcast television, cable television, and satellite television as we've known it, and the digital aspects of connection and provision of content, all are important. And with what the Disney Corporation and therefore ABC and ESPN are able to achieve looking forward, those are enormously important strategic considerations for us. And then we get into discussions that really have been put on hold about how do we elevate some of what happens around our football championship and both of our basketball tournaments. You know, we've been talking about, Music City being such a special place. How do we elevate what happens both inside and outside the arena to attract fans in a different way? It was fascinating to watch what's happened with the Predators playoff runs, to the Stanley Cup finals and through the playoffs, to see the ability to do some things outdoors in Nashville. So those are maybe the operational things on our mind beyond those big picture strategic issues that are impacting college sports.
I love it. And the look ahead to the media space and just what it's going to be like going forward in that digital space, to get a head start on that with what you guys have done with this partnership with Disney and ABC and ESPN, is something that personally I'm very excited about. And I think a lot of people are going to be even more excited about it. It was cool the other day. And my husband's a Alabama baseball alum, and he was just watching the Alabama baseball game on his phone via the ESPN app. And I thought, how cool is it that, going forward, that's just more how we're all going to be viewing everything.
Yep.
And we're embracing that here, and Disney's embracing that, and exciting that the SEC will be partnered with that. Greg, I know one of your big priorities is the student athlete experience. And what's the number one priority for you going forward to continue to grow that and to continue to make it better?
Actually, I'll spend my evening on a couple of Zoom calls with our student athlete leadership councils, our football specific council, and then our all sports leadership council. And I have to answer that question right now, just going back to our connection to those groups through the spring and the summertime. And we've really left them alone as they return to activity, just knowing the time pressures that are present. So this evening, we'll reestablish that connection for the first time. The lights are coming on, so that must have been like the big answer. It's like they heard I was publicizing our relationship, so we've got all kinds of.
We were just waiting for you to say that, and then all the lights come on. Ta-da!
Is there a laser show and confetti coming now too? So watch out.
I'll do an interpretive dance soon.
There you go. But our student athletes were a part of the conversation. So we have to reconnect to that, find out what's on their mind. They were asking through last summer, what's going to happen with my eligibility? Will I have a meaningful season? Will we have championships? And it started with conference championships, because that's the manifestation of it just means more. And then we'll go into some of these policy discussions. We're actually bringing in Wilbur Hackett, who I mentioned. Wilbur was a longtime football official, was the first African-American to be elected by his team as team captain. He played football at the University of Kentucky from 67 to 70, 71, linebacker there. There's a statue honoring him and three of his teammates. And we've asked Wilbur to come tell his story to our student athletes. We just finished Black History Month. Wilbur and Godfrey played his first 2 years of college basketball at Vanderbilt. Asked them to tell their stories to our staff 2 weeks ago. And so we're going to do that with our student athletes. And I think connecting them to our history is a new thought for us. And we want to do that well. Those who experience that reality can share their experiences and help our young people learn, even in today's environment.
Yeah, that's excellent. Let's get some questions from the audience. I've got a couple here. We'll start with Jared's question. He says, what is your favorite part about being conference commissioner?
You will appreciate this. My wife asked me that the week of the college football playoff. And I said, right now, I'm not sure there's anything favorite. It's just like every day. It has been, and I missed it last week. There's a lot of stress around basketball tournament week, so I'll just acknowledge that and own it. And then the next week, when we have all these teams in first and second rounds, men's and women's teams, to be a part of that, I love that week. Yeah. Just the hopes are there that we might achieve something phenomenal. Some of the stress has subsided. I really enjoy that. Enjoy the interaction with young people. I presented 2 trophies. Arkansas won both the championships in men's track and field and in women's indoor track and field. And I just walked around and said thank you to the young people who compete. And I've had cool moments where through this year, some really high level athletes have come up to me to say thank you, or sent me a note. And that has been my favorite part. As hard as it's been to know that, forget all the nonsense about the media criticizing. It's not about the money. It's not about the tickets. It's not about the TV. That's a byproduct of what we do. We support, we educate, and we care, and we compete. And we've done that. And, our competitors, who are young people growing from adolescence to adulthood, want to be a part of that. And it's really special to experience both the highs and the lows of that effort.
Yeah, you mentioned the evil empire of college baseball, and this next question factors in there a little bit. Nancy asks, how has the scholarship cap worked specifically in college baseball due to the pandemic? Meaning, how many players can be on a college roster? How long will this last?
So one of the things that happened last year, I was actually in Nashville over at the Omni. There was a press statement from the NCAA national office that really committed to extending the eligibility of spring sports student athletes who'd had their season disrupted. Eventually, about 6 weeks later, that happened. So everyone who played last year and made it through a third to a half of their season, that year of eligibility, that year of athletic competition didn't count as one of their 4 years. But we still had a whole bunch of freshmen coming in. So let's just take baseball. The scholarship cap is 11.7. You can go home and talk that through with Josh. You probably know it better than I, Laura.
We've talked it many times.
Yeah, 11.7, and it's equivalencies. Unlike football, where football, if a young person receives $1 of scholarship money, that's one counter of 85. In baseball, it's a percentage. So you can spread the money around, partial scholarships that add up to, kind of full-time equivalencies that we're used to in an employment determination. So full-time equivalency or equivalency scholarships. Okay, so there's two things that I just talked about. One is scholarship limits, 11.7. They can be divided up. And the other is eligibility extensions, which has meant there are more people on rosters. You're going to see crowded dugouts in baseball games this year. We've encouraged more people to go to the bullpen to provide social distancing. Those who were in their last year of eligibility last year, so just think seniors last year who came back, have their financial aid exempted. It doesn't count in the 11.7 this year. The issue is going to be next year. So when eligibility extension recipients continue to participate, we still kind of had a glut on our rosters, more people able to stay around. Candidly, I think the NCAA should have figured this out already, that we basically, if you have the eligibility extension in your last year, and you stay at the same university to participate consistently, you're academically eligible, you behave responsibly, then we apply that same exemption. Now, I advocate for that approach in every one of these sports where we've extended eligibility. That's a little bit like Charlie Brown's teacher probably for people, blah, 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 blah. But fundamentally, we have restrictions on the number of scholarships. We've extended eligibility, so there are more young people on our teams pursuing degrees. So that's a great thing. We need to make sure we can support them in the future as opposed to having to make some harsher decisions and recognize for just a period of time, we're going to work through this pandemic reality and it will work.
I did not think that was Charlie Brown's teacher. I thought that was very well said. We are also opening up our chat here to see if we've got additional questions from a few more people. So we'll see how that filters through, and I'll update you as we get those. But I wanted to follow up on a couple more things, Greg, because I think that as you've spoken about the challenges of this past year and these past few months, what maybe gets lost in a lot of it is that it's still ongoing. And maybe this sounds naive, but there were times through a lot of this where I thought, okay, surely as a country, as a sports world, we'll be past some of this stuff. And yet it really has become more a part of our reality than anything else. So how would you describe what it's like just now and even looking forward, knowing that you're still very much in it? It's not something that you can look in the rearview mirror about.
My purpose in going back to review my interviews from a year ago was to just see what we were having to think through, because we're going to have to do some of that again. So the media day question in football, will we have media days in July? We're planning to do so. We know our timelines now to make decisions. We are preparing to play the season as scheduled on Labor Day weekend. I think we'll be back towards normal. That's different than back to normal. And that's a really important distinction. So how do we just think about what do we do now to provide for healthy opportunities? how does that support healthier opportunities moving forward? So the vaccine is an important part of what's happening right now. The ability of our society, big picture society, whether it's here in my office or in Nashville or around our events, to mask, to be socially distanced, to wash your hands, limit contact, so we can stay healthy. That allows us to move back towards normal. If we have another spike, and keep in mind, we've seen this really deep dive, the decline in the positivity rates, hospitalizations, we're still above where we were from a positive test positivity rate or even hospitalizations. If you look at July's numbers or April's numbers, we're still above that level. So there's a light at the end of this tunnel, but we're not done. We're not at the finish line. And I want to be at the finish line more so than anyone, I think. So I think the first step is to recognize we don't know when it will fully end. Second is to engage every day in healthy behaviors. And the third is to be cognizant that some of the adaptations we had to put in place last year may have to remain. Maybe not as dramatic as playing conference only football, but the potential for disruptions and readjustments of schedules may be there. The potential for having to continue to swab our nose. So I had my nose swabbed this morning. Last year, we never talked about nose swabbing in public places, and now it's culturally accepted. So if we can get through, this continuing decline in the COVID rates to a place where it's manageable, perhaps that back towards normal is more like back to normal.
Yeah, and I realize that you don't have some sort of crystal ball here. It would have come in handy many times previously had you had one. But when you look toward college football season, because I know that like us, even here at SEC Network and ESPN, we're already having conversations about our coverage for the SEC next year. What do you think you can envision that looking like, aside from, like I said, things that are not in our control, which would be spikes in COVID cases and things of that nature? Just overall, maybe some things that you hope will happen come fall in college football.
Well, I'd love, so this is not I hope, but I would love to not be in the middle of COVID related interruptions. We could set a schedule and play. I don't know. And so I bring the mentality that we started communicating really early on. And so one of our head football coaches called really a week into the shutdown and said, "Hey, I just asked you to be really thoughtful in how you communicate." For example, what he said was, "My team doesn't know what's going on. They're home. They're not here. They don't have weightlifting. They don't have academic classes to attend, academic support, treatments, whatever else is normal. That's all gone. You need to give them hope. You need to communicate in a way that indicates we're going to get through this and we're going to provide an opportunity." And it took a little bit of thought. And so the messaging became, we're going to prepare to play the season as scheduled, but acknowledge the circumstances around the virus are going to determine whether that's possible or not. And Laura, that's where we are right now. We will be prepared to play the season as scheduled, and I can pivot off of that approach. If I try to chase every hypothetical, like remember last year, hey, we should play in the spring. Don't start until November. Don't start until October. No, we're going to prepare to play the season as scheduled. So we were ready with our stuff, maybe not all the COVID testing that we now support, but that extra 3 weeks, we were ready week one. And then if we have to pivot, we can do that. So our focus is on preparing to play the season as scheduled. I'm a lot more hopeful now. Well, I take it back. Last year at this time, I didn't know what I know now.
Right. We had no idea.
2 weeks ahead, I didn't know how we were going to get it done, yet we did. So I'm a little bit more hopeful than I was like 48 weeks ago, I guess.
I love it. You give me hope. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Commissioner Sankey, for your time and for sharing all of that with us. Really interesting stuff. And I think very enlightening for everyone enjoying this and joining us today. Thanks to our virtual audience for listening in. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for operating through my light show that was happening here behind me. Don't miss, by the way, the